Always a
Maybe?
mystery. I'm
I don't
refreshing.
know. This is the fun part of it. I think we're live. Maybe
Technical.
technical
There we
difficulties.
are. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself. Welcome to
BCC.
BCC
Oh,
All,
woo! Yay!
starring me, Chloe Condon, and
Me, Becca Rosenthal.
okay, I'm going to
I
okay,
think we
there we
did
go.
it. I think we successfully made ourselves live on the internet. I'm proud of us.
I'm really proud of
I'm
us
proud of
too.
you. You
Sorry,
did the
I was
work.
hearing my own voice in my head, and I still am. There we go. Ah, okay.
Yay!
Hooray! I was
You did
hearing
great.
multiple Chloes at once. The joys of going live on the internet. Becca, how are you doing
Yeah.
this week? What has your week been since we last met?
My week has been a roller coaster. So there's been a lot of family stuff. I have a grandma in Connecticut who's in hospice and not doing so well, and so that's been tough. But it's also Passover, so it's like this like happy, joyful, celebrate freedom, but also we're quarantined kind of thing. So
Yeah,
it's
I
been
remember
weird.
you were gonna go to New York. You were gonna go to New York and see a bunch of Broadway shows and see your grandma when we originally met up and were talking about making this little show. That
Yeah,
seems
I
like
was, and
not
then I
that long
didn't.
ago.
It was a month ago, or a little less than a
Wow.
month ago. Yeah, so that's crazy. And then Passover starts tonight, and we normally host like 20 to 25 people for a Seder. And there's a lot of frantic cooking, but now there's a lot of frantic cooking for four of us. So
Yeah.
it's different. How are
What
you? How's
is
your week been?
what is Seder? I'm Jewish. I'm half Jewish from my dad's side. My dad would always ask me, or it would be a party trick. He would say, "What half Jewish are you, Chloe?" And I would go, "Bottom half." When I was like 4. Um, what is Seder? What is the celebration of Seder?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm getting back into Jewish educator mode, which is a great preview
Yeah,
for what we're going to be doing on this episode. I'm very
great
excited.
segue.
Um,
Me without trying.
Good job, but I'll answer your question anyways. So, Passover Seders commemorate the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, but more it's an opportunity for kind of Jews to tell our stories to ourselves. It's a celebration of freedom that is done in a very particular order leading up to a celebratory meal. There's kind of a book and all the ritual you go through, but this year it's just going to be a discussion about the weirdness that is coronavirus and quarantine.
Yeah, it's like a very interesting Seder this year. I've only heard Seder referenced in musicals. I feel like most of my religious schooling is from Andrew Lloyd Webber and William Finn from
Sure.
who wrote what is that musical
And
called,
the spelling
Becca?
bee, right?
Spelling Bee and what's that? Forges and a
Oh, Forge's bitching is falsettos.
Falsettos, yes.
Mm.
Great musicals. So all of my religious history is from Jesus Christ Superstar, Amazing in the Technicolor, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat,
Oh, so
and
good.
Falsettos. All great
Well, you're
musicals.
missing, yeah, you're missing the important one, which is the Rugrats Passover. Like, if you really want to
Great.
understand, you need Tommy yelling, "Let my babies go."
Also, I'm sure I'm dating myself here, but there was a show called Wienerville on Nickelodeon where they did a Hanukkah special. So, like, a lot of my Hanukkah education is from Nickelodeon of the 90s. So,
It's
very,
incredible.
yeah, that's why children's education is very important. My week is
Yeah.
good. I am getting used to working from home. I feel very lucky working at Microsoft that we have a very understanding team, that not everybody is going to be working at peak productivity right now.
Seriously.
So I've been trying to hydrate more. This sticker says, "Awkward in the streets, asleep in the sheets." And
What?
I bought these slippers because my feet were getting cold because I don't wear shoes anymore except when I go out to get my mail. Yeah, I'm trying to wear pants every day. That's a new thing I'm trying to do, just to like,
With or without elastic?
this is elastic. These are technically kind of yoga stretchy pants.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm actually finding that while well, yesterday I curled up on a little beanbag chair that I had and I was looking out the window and I was like, I've turned into a cat. Like, I'm looking at people and wondering what it's like outside. So I'm trying to kind of adjust to this life, but I'm finding with my ADHD that it's helping me kind of get a routine, although I miss my friends. I got to house party with some coworkers yesterday, so that was
Good.
fun, but Yeah, just adjusting to the weirdness that is shelter in place, as we all are. It's quite a journey. But today I'm super excited. We teased about this on Twitter, but today's topic is a very exciting one. We are going to do sort of a this is your life journey into previous jobs that Becca and I have had in our lives. And let's see, who wants to start? Should we go through mine? Should we go through yours? How should we should start?
I want to start asking you because you worked at a Disney store, and I am fascinated by that, both the why and the what.
Yes. Okay.
And then the fact that now you're a developer evangelist at Microsoft just feels like a fun line to have to draw.
It is. There is a great story there. So what Becca and I are going to do is we're going to go through each of these jobs and talk about what we learned from each of these jobs, kind of how it helps us today in our day-to-day lives as at Reddit and at Microsoft. So if you want to follow along, I will be putting links down below to a copy of Becca's resume, and and if you want to follow along right now, my LinkedIn is just my name, so you can check that out, and I'll link that after we record as well. Disney store. So I did not have any jobs before I moved to San Francisco in 2007. I literally moved the day after I graduated high school. I was like, I'm ready to move to the big city. And I had gotten into SF State, and I moved a couple months, I guess it was the summer before college started, to just kind of like get used to the city. Literally just to figure out how to ride Muni, because if you've ever lived in San Francisco, public transportation can be confusing. Oh, by the way, everyone, before I forget, we do have chat over here. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction on the YouTubes. So if you want to ask us questions, go ahead and ask us along the way. We'll be checking it throughout. So back to Chloe, circa 2007, bright, bushy-eyed, coming to the big city, learning how to use Muni. And I had never had a job before, which is pretty unusual for I guess it was 17. But as I mentioned on the last episode, my mom died when I was 15. So around the time I would have been getting like my Baskin-Robbins jobs or something, I was dealing with a lot of other things in my life. But I walked into Stonestown Mall which, if you're not familiar, is technically in San Francisco, but kind of like on the edge of Daly City in San Francisco. It's right by San Francisco State. And I walked into the Disney store and I said, "Hi, are you hiring?" And they said, "No, but you look like you should work here. So do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that's how I got my job at the Disney store. I, of course, had my resume with me. I like went to the mall because I was like, well, this is like
what was on your resume?
You know what? I don't even think I had a resume. Now that you mentioned it, maybe I brought in my theatrical resume because I was like a working actor, like as a child actor.
You had jobs, they just weren't like professional jobs.
Well, no, I mean like it was community theater, so like I guess I must have just like filled out the job application and been like, "Hey, I want to work here," and they were like, "Cool." And honestly, so it was a retail job, not a realtor job. That would be funny if I did realty for the Disney store. But they kind of hired me they're like, "Oh, you're an actress. This is great. Like, we want someone on the floor." At the Disney store, they called things like the behind, like where you would go get the stuff behind the little door, that's called backstage, and the cash register is called the box office, and you're called a cast member if you work at the Disney store, at least back when I worked there. And they wanted me to go around dressed, because we had like costumes and stuff. I would like dress up, so High School Musical 2 had just come out, Enchanted had just come out, and I would go around and be like, "Do you want to pre-order the DVD?" But I would like dress like someone from High School Musical and be like, "Hey, fellow kid," like. But I also just like worked the cash register and stuff. I worked with a lot of difficult parents, which prepared me to work with very difficult personalities in my current role and beyond. I got really used to stacking plushy animals and making displays look really nice, which actually has come to be useful. I mean, my theater degree prepared me for a lot of like event planning and management stuff, but I feel like I know how to fold very well and how to stage an area very well. But yeah, that was my first job. And that Disney store, fun fact, closed and turned into a Sephora, which I would later work at as well. So I did not leave the same spot in the mall, except for a brief stint at J. Crew for several years during college.
So that was your like during college job?
Yeah, I worked there part-time while I was taking classes full-time. So I was like Probably not the best employee because I had to rehearse nights and weekends, so really I could only work daytime, weird shifts between when my classes were, but it was really fun. I still follow a lot of those people on Instagram, and I'm still friends with a lot of them. Hi, Gracia, if you're out there. But it was a really, I do vividly remember we did, if you've ever worked in retail before, there's something called like overnight shifts where you like basically redo the whole store for like the holidays, or you do inventory. And I remember, you know, those magic towels that like you put in water and you like, they expand. They're like little towels. So they're little hand towels and stuff. I remember vividly one night, like at 2 a.m, just going through hundreds and hundreds of they call them magic towels, and just like counting them and doing inventory. And I remember in that moment, I had no programming experience, but I was like, there's gotta be a better way to do this. There's gotta be like an app, because we were all doing it by hand. If I had known what I know now, I would have built a simple logic app through Microsoft. But yeah, that was my first job. What about yours, Becca?
So my jobs pre-Reddit were pretty much all in the Jewish world somehow. Mm-hmm. Whether it was babysitting families that I met through my family's, like the synagogue we went to, or being a summer camp counselor for like, you know, kids and teenagers when I was like 17, 18, which the fact that they let me be in charge of like 15 kids when I was like 17, like I was literally the doctor they would go to when they got hurt. Like, what should I do, Becca? You're 17. You must know things. And I was like, this is bad for everyone involved. Like Swine 09 at Jewish summer camp. And then when I was in college, I taught Sunday school, which was fun because I was teaching 4th graders and 6th graders. And I did a lot of like making my own curriculum and figuring out how to teach. And what was really interesting from that is it taught me a lot about different learning styles and how some people really respond to like art projects, and some people really respond to discussion, and some people need a visual, and some people, you know, will run the other way if they see a visual. And it kind of planted the seed for thinking about how different people think. Yeah. And then right after college, I went to the Institute of Southern Jewish Life in Jackson, Mississippi, which exists. And I was a traveling Jewish educator. And what that means that during the week, I wrote Sunday school curriculum for a K through 12 curriculum that was used by like 75 congregations. And then on weekends, me and the other people I worked with would travel to these various communities and run special programs. So we were doing all sorts of things from like, you know, playing guitar for preschoolers one week to like leading programming in a bouncy house the next, to like running an art history program about like women in Judaism. It was weird.
So what kind of curriculum was it? It was like, what kind, you were teaching them about like Jewish studies and things like that?
Yeah, so every grade had like different key topics. So there'd be like Jewish holidays and Jewish ritual, and like Israel was one of them, which got me in a lot of trouble and got the donors mad at me. That's okay, whatever.
So I bet you're really, really good at writing documentation then, huh, Becca? Because you can like write a curriculum and you know how to teach people things.
Oh, wait, let's talk about anything else. So I am good at writing. The thing that job taught me more than anything else was how to talk to strangers, actually. Yeah. And it was how to communicate with all sorts of different people and just go with it when things are weird. Because what would happen is we would drive to these towns and we'd be doing home hospitality. So every weekend I'd be staying with a different family, and sometimes it'd be a family with kids, and other times it'd be empty nesters, and we would just have to get them to like us and get them to believe in us and want to like drive us around.
Yeah, because they're like, who are these people? Why should I care? Like, and which is something we talked about on our last episode, like something that you are able to bring to the table with your previous experiences. Like, I can get a room excited. I can get people interested in what I'm talking about. I have a special gift for you, which is, as you were talking, I found this picture of me working at the Disney store dressed in a child's extra large Buzz Lightyear costume, giving out candy on Halloween.
So that's incredible.
Becca and I were talking about how I have all of these photos from my previous life, and Becca unfortunately had a phone stolen, so I will be sharing some images from my previous life. I also was a children's birthday party entertainer for a hot second, but I couldn't find images of that, and you should all be thankful because it was a terrifying Minnie Mouse costume that looked like, you know, something you would see in Times Square. It was quite a nightmare.
It's incredible.
Someone said, "You look like Cinderella. The job at Disney Store is perfect for you." Unfortunately, I was dressed like this.
So it's funny because I look at the like crazy clothes you're wearing, and I think to the day that like Reddit was moving offices, and we had this big Lost and Found, and I just decided to do a whole fashion show of the Lost and Found. So I just started like putting on random jackets and shirts and pants and like running around as one does as a software engineer at work, normal things, and it's fun. And I was, but it was one of those like happy things that, got people really excited during a kind of stressful time. But that was a skill I picked up when I was basically a communal idiot for 2 years that was there to like be the break in the monotony.
Yeah, and you have to, having worked in children's theater briefly, and by briefly I mean not so briefly, just to give you all an idea, I always had a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job after college, and I of course did a lot of theater and performances during college, but I mostly played children and teenagers. I am 30 years old, of course, but it was rare that I ever played anybody over the age of 16, because when you do theater, there's a famous quote, I think it's from Neil Simon, that says never work with children or animals, like as far as like theater and film is concerned. And so like directors and theater companies, they don't want to hire children usually because there's a lot of child labor laws and it gets really tricky with how long. That's why Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen were on Full House as 2 people so they could swap them out. But people would be like, oh great, we can work with this 22-year-old woman who looks 16. That's why in Greece everyone looks 30 years old because they didn't want to hire actual high school students. So I played a kid for a really long time, and I did children's theater for a really long time. I also worked at a summer camp, but I talk about this in a talk I give that's called The ROI of LOLs, about the importance of humor in tech. You can check it out on YouTube later. That children, there's scientific studies that say they will lose interest after it's something like 8 minutes. That's why a lot of children's television has bright, flashy lights and music and things to get them up and dance, because I don't know about you, Becca, but even as an adult, and I'm willing to bet it's even worse for us adults now that we are addicted to our phones, I'm itching to look at my phone every couple minutes when I'm watching a normal presentation.
So that's what I learned with curriculum development, is basically we do all these things to make stuff fun for kids, and then for adults we do these boring discussions where it's like sit in a room and just talk, and adults don't like that either. So one of the things that I learned in Mississippi was how to put together programming that was actually interesting for adults. And so I actually ran a workshop for the women engineers at Reddit about 1.5 years ago, where we used one of my favorite formats, where I printed out all of these statements and then gave everybody red, yellow, and green stickers. And red was the I disagree, green was the I fervently agree, and yellow was the whatever. And we had people walk around and put the stickers on, and then that was the basis of the conversation. And it led to such a better conversation than we would have had we just gone through a list of prompts and talked about them. Yeah. And I was really grateful to have had that experience planning programming. Because it was able to bring something in this engineering environment that was really positive.
And I'm sure very similarly, I also worked at the Chinatown YMCA in San Francisco as an after-school program leader. And I think that was a really interesting lesson on expectation setting, because in my mind I was like, I'm going to come into this school and teach all these children, and it's it's going to be so wonderful. And it was total chaos and absolute opposite. And I had to learn to adapt to the needs of 30 plus, children who were coming to this after school program, and, constantly change my curriculum and figure out what worked for them. And it's something that I feel like I use a lot with my content now. If I put out a blog post or a video post even, and I'm like, okay, people seemed to like this piece of it. How can I do that more? Just be the adaptability, kind of resiliency part of, kids are the toughest audience. So I feel like, working now with engineers, it's like, piece of cake. I can handle these people. Sometimes.
So let me ask you this though. When you think about your theater experience, because I know a lot of people who listen, they're coming from boot camps, transitioning from one career. How do you talk about that past experience in a way that makes your current experience make sense? How would you tell that story?
Yeah, well, it's interesting now, of course, because I've been working in the industry about 3 or 4 years. So now I at least have those things on my resume. But back when I was initially applying for things, right after Hackbright, my selling point, and I actually kind of pivoted my job search around this. I was like, look, I just graduated from a boot camp. I am up-leveling my skills in tech. I feel like those can be taught, but my public speaking skills and my ability to present and teach are here. So like, I have the opposite. I'm the opposite of most candidates that you're interviewing for this role. I've been presenting my entire life, except I've been in tap shoes and a costume. And I'm fearless with public speaking. I truly do not get nervous. I really, really enjoy it. I love to write. I have all these pieces of my degree specifically, but also just my life experience as, as crazy as playing a crayon and the day the crayons quit, but also just like, I worked at Galileo's summer camp, and I taught a curriculum and was able to teach kids not computer science but STEM related things. So I think once I kind of pivoted my job search to highlight those pieces of like what I was good at and my expertise and what I did. I think I built an app called Where Art Thou around the time that I was interviewing, because by suggestion of either my boyfriend or one of my mentors, they were like, just build a project, like make a website for it. And you're the creator of it. So just say that you created this app. And I was like, but that's lying. And it's like, are you creating the app? Uh-huh. Well, then you created the app. And it just felt so foreign. It's just like we talked about on our last episode about how like you have to just get used to calling yourself a software engineer. It can be a really foreign thing, and you can feel very much like an imposter, especially when you first start out in this industry. And I think it took me kind of not only finding like what was good and different and unique about myself, but highlighting that in my cover letter, in my resume. And once I did that, I got so many more interviews because people were like, we want to learn more. Okay, so what's your deal? Like, this is an interesting story. Theater to tech, tell me about this. And then I'd be like, okay, cool, here's the app that I built. And they were like, whoa, okay, so you do theater and you do this? And I'm like, well, I'm not doing theater anymore. I don't have time for that. But yeah, I think that there's a lot, like, and to rewind back to right before I started Hackbright, I was in a deep, deep state of like despair and depression, thinking like, oh my God, I wasted 25 years of my life like doing this theater thing. What's wrong with me? I see these kids at hackathons who know way more than I know. But I now realize the value of it. I back then, before all of this, before I got into the industry, I was just like, what a waste of my time. Why did I get this stupid degree? I was in a class one. I hear my boyfriend talk about, he has a computer science degree from UTD, which is like a super technical school in Texas. And he would say, oh yeah, in my advanced calculus class. I'm like, one time I had to pretend I was a cat for 3 hours, like in an improv thing. And, yeah, that was my degree. So, you know, like, you were in advanced calculus? Well, I was in a musical about chess during the Cold War. Boom. Like, it's a weird degree, but there's so much that has given me this level up from other people in this industry that, like, is invaluable, that is really hard to teach. Well, not hard to teach. And I've just been doing it for so long that it's second nature to me. Like, I love to host panels. I love to do stuff like this. There's just a lot of pieces of my degree that did not show themselves as being super valuable till I got into the industry. So yeah. Okay, I've got your resume here.
There's some things that are more technical on it than just Jewish things, sort of. Well,
okay.
Made it sound it.
President and team captain of the Claremont College Women's Rugby Football Club. Today.
Hell yeah.
Actually, someone DM'd me, a friend of mine, Ben, DM'd me and said that his wife played rugby with you. Small world.
Wait, who's it?
I'll have to look it up
Emma,
later.
Yeah, Emma's a good friend of mine, actually.
So you've never managed as an engineer, but you've managed a rugby team. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I put that on because rugby players are a unique breed of competent and crazy that I think explains me really well. Because because rugby.
Rugby
Reddit. I talk about these days.
r/rugby.
It's a good sub, not gonna lie. Spend some time there. No, but in order to play a sport like rugby, you have to be risk taking. You have to be committed. You have to be able to work with a team. You have to be able to communicate with people, or people will physically get hurt.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to assert that leadership. Plus, it's one of those things that makes you stand out. I'm very similar to you in that my goal was not to make myself a cookie cutter. My goal was to show why I am very different than anybody else here.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely one of the things that I threw out there.
Yeah, we have a couple questions here that I'm going to answer. So someone said, I know this conversation's about old jobs, but could you talk a little bit about your work at Microsoft? Yeah, so
Future episodes. Just kidding.
Yes, we'll go into, we went into a little detail in the last episode, but I work as the cloud advocate. My job is really cool. I get to teach people about all the fun, interesting things that you can do with Azure, and that manifests itself in videos like this, tutorials, blog posts, all kinds of talks when we can go out. But yeah, I get to basically educate people now on how to use Azure. So I get to use a lot of my presentation skills and my speaking skills and my, thirst for learning to share that with other people. And then we had another thing here that says, has there been a certain aha moment where you realize that your old jobs gave you a magic skill that no one else at your current job has? Ooh, I have one of these. Do you have one, Becca?
I do. I've had a bunch of them where I just realized that the stuff that I've gone through in the past has prepared me for now. Just a lot of issues with I'm trying to think. Go first, and then I'll continue to think on the actual example I'm going to use.
So I'm actually really glad that you asked this, Brendan, because I just rewatched our first episode, and we got distracted from me telling this very important aha moment in my life. So at Hackbright, you do a final project where you demo all the skills that you made into this lovely final project that everybody does a different one. And when it came time to present them for demo night, which is sort of this fun night where all these different companies from, Uber to, small startups, big startups, all kinds of companies come and hear you present to companies that are hiring. All of the women in my cohort were kind of nervously pacing around and looking at their notes, very nervous. And I was just kind of like, what's going on? And everyone's like, you're not nervous? And I was like, this is the easiest part. Building the app was hard. Talking about it, oh my God. So I kind of had this epiphany in that moment that this is a very unique skill in this industry. I had basically up until that point during Hackbright been like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I had to Google what STEM was on the first day. I felt very out of place. But once that kind of clicked for me, I was like, interesting. This is a skill that not a lot of people have, at least to the experience and level that I do. I had been doing it my entire life. I mean, my parents always said I was born in a trunk because they both were in the performing arts. So I think that was a huge moment. And I actually give a talk now, which Brendan, you'll love. It has a bunch of RuPaul's Drag Race gifts in it. I think they still present it at Hackbright. That's all about finding your gimmick in tech. There's a song, of course, from the musical Gypsy where there's three burlesque strippers, and they're all singing about the different things that make their strip special. And it's a wonderful musical, by the way. Definitely check out Gypsy during Shelter in Place. There's a movie with Bette Midler, and there's one with Natalie Wood that's very good. But basically, they're like, well, my strip is special because my outfit lights up, and mine's special because I play the trumpet, and the other one has ballet training. And that was sort of my gimmick moment, where I was like, oh, my gimmick is that I have this performing arts background, and I'm able to present very well. And so I always encourage folks, and it's really, really hard to find this for yourself. So if you don't know what it is, ask a really good friend and be like, hey, what's my gimmick? What is cool about me? Because I often mentor women and people who've gone to boot camps, and they're just like, well, I'm not really cool. I used to I'm trying to think of a good example. People will be like, well, I'm not really cool. I have this biology degree. I'm like, that is cool. It may not be cool to you
right now. Wait, Chloe, Georgiana, if you're listening, I'm just going to embarrass you here as I do every time I speak. I have a mentee right now who has a PhD in astrophysics.
Yes.
Who doesn't believe she's qualified for things. And she'll be like, well, what was it like for you? And I was like, well, with my Middle East studies background, it was really hard for me to say I should do engineering. But, if I had a PhD in astrophysics, it'd be fine. And she's like, well, it's different. And I'm going, it's not nearly as different.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that especially when you're making a career change, you kind of view your previous life. I used to call myself a recovering actress. I still do. But you kind of view it as well, that's the old me, and I'm trying to get rid of this. No, lean into that, because like, you may not want to be an actress or astrophysicist in your new job, but like a great example is I meet a lot of former teachers and principals, and it's like you have a shoe-in to any like education startup that you apply for. Like Scholastic
Yes.
would love to have you. A great example is I was an office manager, which we should get to after this one. I was an office manager for Pax Labs, the Juul vape company. If I'm sure you're very familiar, that the teens vape with. And I forgot what I was saying about this.
I have an aha moment though.
Go for it, and then I'll come back to it.
So one of my superpowers is my ability to take my work seriously without taking myself seriously at work. And I think the goofiness of being an educator and the goofiness of like being a show pony, for lack of a better word, really taught me that, to the point where like we were doing an internal hackathon and I stood up in front of the company and I said, I'm writing a musical based on a quote in the New Yorker that said a musical about Reddit would be called A Barrage of Dicks. And I said, I need your help. And everybody looked at me like, what are you doing? And it's like, no, trust me. I'm a songwriter. Like, this is a skill. I can do this. And like, that was how I introduced myself. And then fast forward a year later, somebody pings me and was like, hey, Becca, really weird question for you. I was like, what's up? They're like, we want to get more people to come to this architecture review meeting where people do like design documents and then get other people to review them. And we want to encourage more people to be in the room where it happens. Can you write us a song parody to The Room Where It Happens from Hamilton?
Of course you can. Yes.
And I was like,
you're like, it would be my honor.
Literally. And I wrote like the verse and a chorus in like an hour, and I was like, what do you think is a prototype? And
oh my gosh.
Whatever. Like, I haven't performed it yet, but like those types of skills have been really helpful to be able to have that extra thing I bring to the table.
Yeah.
The other one that was an aha moment was when I was sitting at a table with some folks, and one of the big engineering tasks that Reddit was working on then too, is moving from a monolith to microservices. So what you can think that this means basically is, imagine Grand Central Station is where every single train in New York goes through, and we want to break out into more hubs so that if one thing breaks down, everything doesn't break. And that's kind of the idea of monolith to microservices. And a product manager asked me, like, I know microservices matter, but like, what are they? And I told her that very metaphor, and she looked at me and she said, thank you for explaining that in a way I understand. Like,
yes.
I was the first technical person that had explained this concept in words that made sense to her. And I realized that it was my time code switching between, various groups, both in my like Middle East studies degree and living in the South, that taught me how to figure out how to word things in ways that made sense to different groups of people. And I think being able to communicate cross-functionally and help people communicate cross-functionally is one of my superpowers.
Absolutely.
And the last job was hugely instrumental in teaching that skill.
I remembered my thing.
Do it.
Sorry, y'all. I didn't take my Adderall for that like I should have before this live stream. So I worked as an office manager, and it actually was a really big reason why I got into engineering, because I hated that job. I spent, of course, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I love LaCroix. I used to hate LaCroix because I spent 4 hours plus a day putting it in a fridge for a bunch of very thirsty marketers and engineers who worked at Pax and Juul Labs. I felt very undervalued. I felt very invisible. It was very much a kind of a service job where I would, unload the groceries every Monday. I would, have to clean up dog pee if someone's dog peed. Like, it was very kind of thankless job. Order the pizza for the company party but not be able to participate in eating the pizza, having everybody celebrate everybody's birthdays, but then it was your own birthday, send your own birthday card around. Very awkward. But a lot of that job I would just leave every day. It was right around when Frozen had come out a couple years before, and I'd just be like, let it go, and just like cry on the way home. It was a really kind of a tough job for me to have, and it actually motivated me a lot to learn how to program, because I was just like, I gotta get out of here.
And go into the unknown?
I'll show them. I gotta get the heck out of here. So what's really interesting though is when I worked at Max Labs. We had, if you've ever been to either a startup in San Francisco, or I think they're probably outside of San Francisco as well, there's this company called Envoy, which is these little iPads, and you sign an NDA on them typically when you visit a tech company, and then it has like a Slack integration that tells the person that you're visiting or the office manager, like, hey, so-and-so's here to see you. Really cool app, and I actually applied there. And I think the reason that I got an interview, it was I think it was my first or second on-site whiteboarding interview ever, was in my cover letter. I was like, look, you're never gonna interview an engineer that's used your product as an office manager. Like, you need me. Like, I can give you product insight that you will not be able to get other than, like, I've been in the trenches using your app. So I think that there's other ways as well to kind of like leverage your previous life and your previous experience that like may not appear to you at first. I of course did not get that job because it was like my first or second whiteboarding interview. Wait,
I used that for Reddit though. I used, part of my appeal to them was, I'm not a Redditor. Like, I'm just trying to learn how to use this product. If you're trying to expand your user base, isn't it good to have people working here that are new to it, that can be fresh eyes? And so I used my not being a power user as an asset as opposed to a liability. And if you frame things that way, then it's way more powerful. Yeah,
and I think that like I get a lot of folks who come out of a boot camp or self-taught and they're just like, well, my resume is crazy. Because I mean, look at my LinkedIn. It's like Disney Store, YMCA, Galileo Learning Summer Camp, played a crayon in the day the crayons quit at Children's Fairyland. Like, my people. Is there a video of that play? Oh yeah, you can YouTube. I'll link it in the thing below. And what's really interesting is I think that like you shouldn't let. I get a lot of people who are concerned that are like, well, my resume looks crazy. Like, they're gonna laugh at me. Here's the thing. First of all, you're probably, this is just a truth moment of truth drop from Chloe. I used to be a recruiter also. We should talk about that too.
What?
Yeah, I was a recruiter. Oh yeah, I was a recruiter for Premier Staffing, which is a staffing agency in San Francisco. I worked in the Oakland office. What I learned about being a recruiter, a couple things. Many recruiters wear large statement necklaces. No, just kidding. That is true. Everybody wears statement necklaces there. It was kind of funny. But I did learn a couple different tips that I'll share with you, Chloe's recruiter moments of truth. First of all, I would always apply on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays because I knew people's inboxes would be insane on Fridays and everybody's doing happy hour wine, insane on Mondays and everybody's doing happy hour wine on Fridays. That's just the truth, especially at startups. I also knew that probably they weren't looking too much at my cover letter, so I just turned my cover letter basically into a Mad Lib, unless it was a super specific thing like Envoy that I mentioned, where I'd be like, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm interested in this job at blank because blank. I'm really excited about blank. Thanks, blank. Like, just so I could rapid fire them out. I knew what to look for in a resume, which we can totally do a resume episode as well, where we kind of talk about how to do your online presence eventually. But I learned all these skills as a recruiter that I found myself telling my other cohort mates, like, oh, don't do that. Like, a recruiter won't like that. But here's a truth moment for you all. Unfortunately, and I do a lot of advocacy around this, a lot of recruiting software filters really amazing candidates out. And it's not just you self-taught learners and boot campers, even very senior engineers will get filtered out, and here is why. And here's a great story around that, 2 great stories. One is that I wanted to refer someone at a previous company I worked for who was this amazing engineer, super, super senior security engineer, fantastic, also went to Hackbright, had a background in theater tech and worked in that professionally. And when she went to fill out the form, it was a drop down for what your degree was, and theater was not on there. So even I could not apply for a job at the own company I worked for. So I was like, hey, if you value diverse people with diverse backgrounds, we got to make this drop down menu not mandatory, or at least have an other. Also, I applied for a Fitbit because I was like, oh, like, you have to imagine young Chloe.
I applied for Fitbit too.
I was like, I wear my Fitbit every day. I'm going to apply there. I was rejected within 3 minutes. And I know a recruiter didn't look at it. I know it must have been recruiting software, unless they were just like, no.
I'm still holding off. I had a friend who went to the gym I went to submit my resume for a job, and I'm still waiting to hear back. So if anybody who works at Fitbit is listening, I'm not looking for a job, but I would love the formal rejection just because it just hurts that I still don't know.
And I couldn't even apply for a NASA internship because I had to have a GPA in there. And funny story, I now do a bunch of work with NASA. So it's like there's a lot of barriers that are put in place from this sort of like, historically everybody has a degree and that's a qualification. But I think it's really interesting now that we're now adapting job applications and interviews to be more open to folks who come from non-traditional backgrounds. Also, funny story, one time I was at an event that I was either speaking at or keynoting at, and someone at a booth was like, hey, come here. We'd really like you to work at our company. And it was a company that I applied for and really, really wanted to work at, like when I was at Hackbright, and I was like, I would love to have worked for your company, but when I applied, your recruiting software filtered me out. Like, and people don't even know. So you have to understand that a lot of engineering managers don't even know this. Like, they're not even like, they don't know what different, products and things and filters are put in place. But if you are watching this and you are like a hiring manager, talk to your recruiters. Like, I know when I was a recruiter, I certainly didn't know what 5 years of Python or JavaScript meant. I had never touched code before. Maybe you actually are open to someone who has like 1 to 2 years, which, Becca, you should talk about while I pull up some images here. You and I are always harping on how people should apply for jobs regardless if they don't check off all the things.
Okay, I want to tell you a little story. So I mentioned my mentee who has a PhD in astrophysics, right, has been coding in Python for a decade. And I'm like, cool, how can I help you? I can't. Yeah, that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I get an email last week from a friend of a friend saying like, hey, will you refer a friend of mine to a job at Reddit? Sure, why not? Have them email me. So this guy emails me, hey, I'm applying. Here's the role. Here's my resume. Thank you so much. Let me know what the next steps are. It was a staff data science position. This person had graduated from a data science boot camp in January. The job listing explicitly mentioned 5 years of experience. He was like, cool, I have 5 minutes of experience? That sounds great. I'll apply anyways. And so great, I sent him a link, referred, fine. My mentee, PhD in astrophysics, read that same job listing that said 5 years and said, oh, I'm not qualified for that. And it's horrifying to me because she's a way better candidate, and then I guilt tripped her into sending me her resume and I have to submit it. But like it's hilarious to me that she won't apply for that job, and he will. And so the moral of the story is it's a numbers game, just apply. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is we were talking about like not having skills that fit the drop down. I actually did some work with a startup that was an AI startup that was working with legal documents, basically trying to filter through emails to find privileged versus non-privileged stuff. And so I did a lot of annotating where basically I was double checking the AI. And it was hilarious to get reach outs asking about my AI programming experience just because I had the words AI on my resume.
Oh my
and I was laughing because like I didn't, and I get these now. It's like you being a blockchain influencer.
Oh, yes, it's very much like that.
But even if you have technical skills, like they might not even be related.
Yeah.
Or like I did a whole inventory that was like a binder of real estate, and I called that creating a database. Like it was a 3-ring binder, but if you say it's a database, suddenly it's technical, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
A database for a databay, as I like to say. Sorry,
that's
everyone.
A line. And even with jokes that bad, you can be employed.
It's true.
Sorry.
I actually think that my bad jokes have gotten me very far in this industry, at least on the Twitter, which reminds me, bad jokes. Here's an image of me from a musical with very bad jokes called Xanadu the Musical. I'm just showing this because this was around the time that I was working as a VIP customer support representative for Gypsy, a gaming company, where my job was to filter or to respond to customer support tickets from customers of games that spent $30,000 and above. They're called whales in the industry, and it was my job to help people with their bases because it was a game called War Commander, and I basically would be like, here's your gold, and I think that job taught me to, first of all, read very, very crazy messages that were in all caps, and I'm sure very similar to some stuff you see at Reddit, Becca, that were just like, my base in the event, how dare you, blah, 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 and then just being like, Hello, Jonathan. Yes, I am crediting 20 gold to your account. And it was a really interesting, I learned a couple interesting things. One, that I actually, I don't use this in my day-to-day, but it was a little foreshadowing to being a woman on the internet. They suggested that we use names that were gender neutral. And I was like, why is that? And they're like, well, when you respond as a name that's gender neutral, they kind of choose in their mind if you're male or female, and they'll respond how they want to. So it was a really interesting, I was like, wow, people respond really differently to me on the internet versus being named Chloe. Of course, now I am a woman on the internet and I realize that harsh reality. But I think I learned a lot about like what it's like. I can empathize so much with customer support representatives. And I, of course, work at Microsoft now, where I work on Azure, which we get a lot of product feedback on. And like I can understand the struggles of, you know, engineers when they come to us and they're like, hey, I really want this feature. Like this feature would be really, really good. And as a customer support agent back in the day, you know, we would get like hundreds of emails at Kickside that were just like, I hate this button, I hate this feature, change it, change it, change it. And we would escalate it to the engineers and be like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. The customer support people, they are your eyes and ears on the ground. They know everything. Also, be nice to your office managers. I tweeted about this last week.
That's the other thing my Mississippi job really taught me, because I was the person planning the events and I was the person doing the promotional stuff and all these things. So like, I go up to the events people at the end of every single event and I thank them profusely, because everybody tells them when things go wrong and nobody tells them when things go right.
That's so true.
And so I've made a big effort to really befriend the people that are doing the kind of work in the trenches.
Absolutely.
The really, like, I'll say quote unquote unglamorous, but it's the things that really keep the lights on and keep things moving. Because it's the importance of the other thing I'll say about weird jobs and people on the internet is I think working with kids has gotten me way better at talking to the Reddit community, because I have the ability to just like see things and be amused by, annoyed by, entertained by, and then like respond seriously or jokingly with all simultaneously, the way you can with kids.
Yes.
And it's a fun thing to get to do, and to like, I don't know, to have that like goofiness even while doing customer support stuff. Like I'm one of the admins that really likes talking to Redditors about bugs and stuff, and other people are deathly afraid. And I'm like, no, let's talk to them. This will be funny.
Yeah, I think there's something so like wonderful, and like I think it's a big reason why people seem to resonate more, especially with people on the internet and on Twitter who are human. I think that's why everybody likes Chrissy Teigen so much. Like she's real. She says and does the things that we're all thinking. It's not some corporate markety Instagram account. Like I watch, oh my gosh, if you're looking for amazing quarantine entertainment, Chrissy Teigen did a wedding, like a full wedding of the two stuffed animals of her child, Chloe. Her child's name is Chloe, and walked them down the aisle. John Legend sings a PG version of Gin and Juice. And it's a beautiful ceremony. I will link it in below. It was a highlight. But I think that's like why we love people like who are real versus like the people who, you know, maybe have a publicist who's tweeting out like, so excited to be in the new Avengers film. Like, I think there's something so relatable and wonderful about people in this industry who just like tell it to you how it is. I like to consider myself one of those people, but you know, Corey Quinn is a great example. He's always tweeting terrible dad jokes and I love him for it. And he's a wonderful human being all around. But I think like when we find people who are saying and doing the things that we want, that we're like, yes, that is just so much more relatable than like, try out this. And that's why I try to make all of my blog posts and videos and everything that I do that's content around Microsoft to have an element of humor. Like bring Clippy into the game, like do a post about bread, like do whatever makes you happy and smile, because it will probably make other people. And that's exactly from educating children. I'm just like, I work with students now, so I'm like, okay, fellow kids, like what's gonna be, do I get on the TikTok? Like it's that adaptability and ability to resonate with your audience. I'm gonna look at questions real quick. Then before we switch over to question and show and tell time, are there any other jobs that you wanna make sure that we cover here, Becca?
Yeah, so the one other thing I do wanna mention is I spent a while, I wanna mention I worked with this real estate company where, full disclosure, this is the real estate company at which my mom is a real estate agent. Like she helps find people and find tenants buildings and whatnot to rent. And like I would show tenants buildings and I literally put it on my resume in a way that made me sound technically competent. Because if you just pick the skills that are remotely technical and then word them in ways that's like true enough, it works out. And so I think that really trying to cherry pick the moments from past jobs that actually sound like they're relatable or they're transferable skills is the way to move forward. I don't have a funny story from that, but it's just the truth. There's a question earlier that I want to get to about being visual learners.
Yes, I have a resource for that, actually. I was just talking to my gal, Danny Donovan. She's amazing. She tweets about ADHD stuff, and she just started learning Python. And there is a wonderful game on phone and Nintendo Switch and a couple other things called Human Resource Machine. That's sort of a visual way of kind of like getting your brain to kind of think like a coder and understand how like loops and different things like that work. So that would be my visual recommendation. How about you, Becca?
So I'm actually very much a kinesthetic learner more than a visual one. I need to do the thing to understand it. So for me, like whenever there's anything I'm trying to figure out, my first instinct is to hop right into a Python shell and just start plugging in variables and seeing if what I think might work will work. I can read a million documents that tell me what the syntax is, but until I physically type it under my fingers, I just don't understand. So I very much learn by failing. And so that's been a really helpful, actually that's been really helpful too, because it means I'm used to failing. And so I don't get frustrated or flustered when I see an error message. I just say, great, now I have a clue on how to move forward.
Yeah, which is a great segue to my show and tell thing, because I am going to put this here. If you go to aka.ms/I've got the power, do you guys like my pun? I've got the power. I highly recommend Microsoft Learn is a free resource and has a lot of beginner tutorials on there. This one specifically is about Power Apps, and Power Apps is basically drag and drop, very low code that kind of just gets your brain thinking about how to design different things. Like you can literally build my Hackbright project, the delayed status posting thing, just with pre-built things. So I would start there with the Power Apps module, and then we also have a bunch of like beginner courses on there as well. Pluralsight also is, I'll tweet about that later today, but Pluralsight's doing a bunch of free courses for April while everyone's stuck at home. But for me, I tend to do a lot better. Like I could not do, I know we mentioned in the last episode, the Cracking the Coding interview book, like I can't read and translate that to code. It just doesn't work for my brain. So any sort of like sandbox module, and Microsoft Learn does have things like that I'm actually like instead of me kind of clicking back and forth, if I'm actually able to do it in there and see it. I also did a really, really wonderful Android nano degree course through, I think it was Udacity or Udemy. That was a lot of clicking on the screen. So like I would check off different things when I got it done. So there's a lot of really great online resources that I will link in the show notes once I get that done, and you can check that out. But yeah.
The other thing I want to say on that question is, as far as like how would you adapt to learning more technical things, I think that paradigm is a really dangerous one, because learning something technical is the same as learning any other skill, whether it be learning, a musical scale on an instrument, or, learning how to cook a recipe, or, a technique, a different knife skill. It's just a skill that requires practice. So putting that block in front of yourself, saying like, this is a technical skill, let me put it in a separate box, is going to do way more harm than good. So It's just learning new stuff.
I think
there's another.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like the boot camp, basically for me, I always think of it like a boot camp teaches you how to learn a language. Like you won't necessarily use that language in your future job. So like you're just kind of teaching your brain the framework of like, okay, what is a function? Like what is a loop? And then once you kind of get that in your brain, those kind of patterns, even just in your rhythm of how you type. Like I view it a lot like choreography versus line memorization, which is a total actor comparison. But truthfully, the minute that I kind of put that together, that I was like, oh, I have to physically do this and see, like have my terminal up and do this simultaneously, I I too am very much a visual learner, so I watched a lot of tutorials, especially when I was interviewing for whiteboarding. There's some really wonderful videos by the woman who wrote Cracking the Coding Interview that have like illustrations. Ooh, and also I will link it in the show notes, but one of my favorites that someone showed us at HackRite, actually, I think Maggie maybe showed it to us, is there's these, I think they're Russian dancers. Did they show this to you, Becca?
Oh,
that
do
the sorting. So like it's this like
cool.
Russian dancing group, and they're all wearing numbers, or like they superimpose numbers on them, and they'll be like, this is a visualization of a bubble sort, and then like they dance and they show you this is how you sort and how they get eliminated. So that would be like, especially if you're kind of struggling with those for loop, or I guess they're all sorts, right? Bubble sort, merge sort, O-event, like they go over all of that. So there's really, really great videos online for that, but I will make sure to link those dancing videos because they're incredible. If you just search like sort dancing, I'm sure it'll pop up.
Not to be confused with sword dancing, because
yes,
that's different.
Very different and more swords than sorting. Let's see. Do we have any other questions in here?
What level of balance with bringing humor and professional do you recommend?
That's a great question. I personally, if you talk to my therapist, I combat a lot of difficult things with humor. So I, as a woman in tech, feel like I have to use a lot of humor in this industry. Now, mind you, not everybody's sense of humor matches, and it's really important to read the room, be that the Twitter world, the world being the room on Twitter, or the room that you're in. So, I would say I bring my authentic self to everything that I do. Of course, I do censor myself a lot, and I have a lot of drafts that I've never sent on Twitter of things, and I've also had to apologize before for things that I've said. But I think as long as you're not offending an individual, a gender, a person, a group, I think, of course, always have the same taste that you would have around your grandma. Try to keep it pretty PG-ish, depending. I mean, of course, Becca's example of the musical, she wanted to write a little different.
What is not safe for work at the company that coined the phrase "not safe for work"?
I would say, to answer your question, there is a Microsoft Chloe and there is a Chloe, and
they're different people.
They're different people, and of course, I think as anybody is, we're different people around our close friend group than we are perhaps in a work situation. But I think it's a healthy balance, and I think like anything that you don't want held or used against you in the court of law, don't say it. Of course, that's a joke that I just said. But I think
landed very well.
Thank you. Well, I was super lucky that I worked
Can you
at a
explain the joke more? That tends to help.
Yeah, so it's called a joke. Okay. No. But I worked at Sentry, Sentry.io, wonderful, wonderful company. And what was really wonderful about Sentry, and actually the reason I decided to work there, and I think the reason why a lot of people just loved coming to our meetups, I'm sure you can attest, Becca, was they had a sense of humor and they were very fun. Every new employee got a GIF made for them, and it could be anything from like a little tiny person on a keyboard jumping from key to key on a green screen, of course, to like even if you go to their careers page, like they have really funny things on there that are like, the LaCroix is flowing freely. Like, I think that it's just like we talked about earlier, about like having that authenticity and bringing your sense of humor to tech. Like, we don't all have to be robots and be like, hello, Synergy, please hire me. And that was actually a thing that I think when I interviewed there, and also when I interviewed other candidates, it was such a like healthy culture of just being, I'm pretty sure that the copy on their website was, your shit's broken, let us help you fix it. And I was like, this is how an engineer talks. I want to work here. These are real people. Totally. It's not marketing jargon. It's like real engineer speak. So I think as far as using your sense of humor in tech, always, just keep in mind who your audience is and how many people it's going out to. And of course, the internet is forever. There's always screenshots. So just have good taste with that.
I have a slightly different take on it, which is I fully agree with the authenticity, but I don't see humor and professional being at odds with each other. I see bad humor and anything as being at odds. Like, if you're not funny, don't be funny.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you can't make that joke, don't make that joke.
Just
but like,
today,
at the same time, bringing levity is so important.
A coworker of mine tweeted something today, shout out to Seth, that said something, he said it's okay if your days start seeming hard or something like that, and then someone made a Viagra joke, and I was like, read the room. So I commented, sir, this is an Applebee's. Because no, it's not the
funny.
time or the place to do that. So I think,
But,
obviously you never want to be offensive. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I was working on migrating all of our account preferences from a Postgres database into a different Cassandra database, and it was moving literally billions of Reddit accounts. And so I wrote the script and I talked to the infrastructure team and I was like, so how long do you think it'll take? And they were like, well, it'll probably take 3.5 to 4 years. And I went back to my manager and I was like, hey, so I talked to Infra and they said this is going to take about 3.5 to 4 years. And then I paused and she just wrote, and left there. And I said, I know, we're looking for 1.5 years tops.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, you have to, in this industry, you have to have a sense of humor on that kind of stuff.
But here's the kicker. But the kicker of that story is that Jason Harvey, who's our sysedge wizard, that wrote a script that took 9 minutes. Why do I have a job? Why am I wasting anyone's time?
So good. Okay, so we're at...
But the moral of the story is humor is important.
Yes, humor is very important for me. And if you're looking for very funny people to follow in tech, who would be my people? Corey Quinn, he's Quinny Pig on Twitter. He's posting a lot of funny stuff. Goodness, I of course am blanking on. Emily Kager, hilarious.
The programmer dad joke subreddit.
Cassidy Williams, Cassidy on Twitter. Oh my God, some of the most hilarious TikToks about programming I've ever seen. I think those are some really, really great examples. So we're almost at time. We're at 4:59 right now. Any parting words, things you want to share? I have a link that I'll share in a second, but anything you want to kind of top this off with, Becca?
Yeah, when you think about previous jobs, I think the most important takeaway is that every life experience is additive. Yes. And so compartmentalizing your past life and your tech life is not nearly as productive as demonstrating how these past life skills can help you. So yeah. I think leaning into the skills and the experiences you've had as opposed to shining is the move. Hang on one second, we got a visitor, that's my dad. I'm going to mute myself.
I am going to put a link here. So if you go to, it's AI April at Microsoft, which is super exciting. We're doing a bunch of AI ML stuff for April. So you can go to aka.ms/making senses. I'm going to do, your girl loves prop work, so I'm going to do a little spray here of, this is dry shampoo, but I'm going to pretend it's hairspray because something I didn't get to talk about today was during my previous job time was in hairspray twice, and when
Did you stop the beat? Or you couldn't stop the beat?
One time when I was right before, or we were rehearsing You Can't Stop the Beat, someone looked at me and I was just so winded and they're like, are you okay? And I said, I can taste blood in my mouth. If you don't know hairspray, You Can't Stop the Beat is basically cardio for 10 minutes and it is wild. But the reason I sprayed my hair was if you check out aka.ms/making senses, I actually built a fun little app that it's basically a post that myself and David Smith put together about different AI and ML things that you can add to your remote presentations to make them more enjoyable for yourself. And I built a line rehearsal bot where you can actually rehearse lines and presentations. You can memorize things that way, and I wish that I would have had it when I was in hairspray. That's my prop work for the day. I think I'm going to do prop work every show. I'm going to be the Carrot Top of BCC, y'all.
Well, I'm not going to be the Carrot Top of BCC, y'all.
I think I have some of it in my mouth, you guys.
Wait, if we're doing prop work, I do want to show off one thing, which is, I'm at my parents' house. This is a CD cover of a CD that I gave out at my bat mitzvah party.
Oh my goodness.
I noticed the Costco PJ pants.
Yes.
The, fashion line. I just feel a need to show that off because it's hilarious.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's all.
I love that.
Thank you for accepting me.
Cool. I think that's going to do it for today. We will, of course, I will over the next couple days put all of the links and the breakdown of the episodes down here. If you want to see our first episode, you can go to aka.ms/BCC all one. I am making my YouTube channel all fancy and cool so you can find all this stuff very easily. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And I'm going to now click the off button. Have a great time tonight from your couch.
Happy Passover, everyone.
Happy
Enjoy
Passover.
Your Passover Seder. Drink a lot of wine.
I'm going to watch Rugrats Passover tonight. I think that's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Just scream with Tom, let my babies go.
Let my babies go. All right. And on that note, have a great Wednesday, everyone. Bye.
Bye.